The White Sox fire their GM and their president of baseball ops. Yankees fans are losing their minds, and the Yankees all of a sudden just magically call up two of their top prospects and throw them in the lineup immediately. The Mets trade Verlander, trade Scherzer, acquire a bunch of young, controllable talent, and the Angels trade for a bunch of guys at the deadline. Doesn't end up working out. What do all those teams have in common? My argument would be, if you're talking Yankees specifically, Mets, White Sox, Angels to a degree, and a handful of other teams, you have a clip on the internet that gains a ton of traction and sheds a lot of light on the poor management and poor ownership of the White Sox by a guy who calls into a radio station, goes on a 7-minute long rant, gets a lot of traction, and shows people like, oh, wow, this guy is right. Holy cow. Birdo from Chicago, thanks for calling in. And you are right. The White Sox are run and managed worse than almost any other organization. And then you have people like the John Boy Media team who were able to lock in the ability to talk to the Yankees manager face to face once a week. And every time they talk to him, they go straight after him with a large social media following, shedding light on the fact that the Yankees as an organization are underperforming for one reason or another. And they go straight to the source and gain a lot of social media traction. You got Frank the Tank with the Mets and the vocal New York Mets fan base, airing out the ownership, airing out the GM. And what do? They make a drastic 180-degree flip. They sell off the rest of the guys that they could at the trade deadline, and they make an entirely 180-degree organizational change. What do they all have in common? It's the power of the fans. It's the power of the internet. It's the power of being vocal. It's the power that we all have in today's society of being able to hold teams, executives, managers, and players way more accountable than in years past. We never had access to these guys on a daily basis. We didn't have access to the clubhouse in the 70s and 80s. And now, come to find out that not only do the fans have a lot more to say about it, but we also have access and have created so many more metrics and numbers and pieces of data that you can use as good indicators to project or value a team's overall performance. And you use those metrics, and the fans have access to it just as much as anybody else in today's world with the internet and the information we have. And all those things considered, the power of the fans, the access to the information, the new stats, the new metrics, all of a sudden, the fans are starting to realize, wow, it's baseball, and you can't just buy wins. There's a pitch clock, there's a pace of play, speed, durability, longevity, clubhouse leadership, and overall team chemistry is more important in today's game than ever before. You know who doesn't have youth and speed and energy and quick swings and team-oriented at-bats? Well, teams like the Mets going into the year, who, oh, that's right, had the oldest roster in the major leagues. Or teams like the Yankees, who had the second oldest roster in the major leagues. Or teams like the Padres, who were counting on veteran leadership and contributions from Matt Carpenter, 37, and Nelson Cruz, 42. Then you go to the other end of the spectrum, at the top of the standings, metrics, leaderboard, whatever you want to call it, and you got teams like Baltimore, Dodgers, Rangers, Tampa Bay, Houston, Atlanta, all of which have youth, have homegrown talent, major clubhouse vibes, speed, depth, all the things that those high payroll teams never had at any point this year. Clubhouse vibes and leadership and those types of things are hard to quantify. It's hard to sit back and go, well, these guys just don't have it, you know, or like these guys look bored, or these guys look unprepared, or these guys look lackadaisical. And I also recognize that those things, those, you know, vibes or good energy or, you know, streaks or all that stuff, that comes from winning games, right? But at the end of the day, You look at a team like the Yankees, who rely on, outside of Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, who can't move. Anthony Volpe, super young prospect without what appears to be any sort of analytical support for him once he came up to the major leagues. Threw him into the fire and said, go get him, champ. And then you find out from some anonymous sources, from former minor leaguers, like, yeah, when I was with the Yankees, as opposed to some other teams, the Yankees are way behind in terms of analytics and what they value as an organization compared to other teams. You also look at their roster: Yankees, Mets, Padres, Angels, Cardinals. You go, wow, there's not a ton of homegrown, drafted, developed, and high-rated prospect called up to major league team contributors on the roster. Everybody wrote off the Dodgers. Everybody. They lost Bellinger, they lost Turner, Trey, and Justin. And all they do is develop. Holding these teams that perform below the standard of excellence or below the expectations, holding those teams accountable is not only more important now than ever, but it's also much more possible in today's world than ever before. I mean, you can literally just put together a Twitter thread based on some information you've collected, some video examples, maybe some anecdotal evidence, maybe just some opinion-based stuff, put it out on the internet, and it could all of a sudden gain traction and shed light on a team or a situation or a metric or anything you want that could make a team or a player change what they're doing. It happened with the Yankees, and they got their hand forced by the John Boy Media team saying, hey, Aaron Boone, why is everybody on the team either an old bag or a first-year prospect or Aaron Judge? Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know what we could do about that. John Boy teams, there's no energy. There's no youth. There's no motivation. There's nothing coming out of the organization. Yankees, okay, cool. We'll call up 2 prospects. Mets fans go, this team is wildly overpaid. We can't be paying 2 guys that are 39 and 40 years old, $40 million a year to pitch for us and be average. And the Mets go, okay, we'll trade them both and get a bunch of prospects in return. The Angel fans go, dude, we can't just roll out this mediocre ass team around Shohei Ohtani and hope that they get to the postseason. What do the Angels do? They trade for 7 guys at the deadline. Granted, it didn't work out, but you get the point. At the end of the day, man, us as fans, we have not only a responsibility, in my opinion, but we also have the opportunity in the age of the internet, in the age of Twitter, and in the age of information. We have the ability now more than ever to make and have a serious impact on a team's performance, not just in the micro for a single season like right now, but for the long-term projectability and sustainability of success for any team. I mean, look at Philadelphia, man. The Philly fans came out and said, man, we got Trey Turner, 10-year deal. The guy's been struggling. We know he could be a good player. Let's back this guy up. Let's show out to the ballpark. Let's give ourselves and our team the support that they need and the energy that they deserve. And maybe it'll have an impact on the games. Wouldn't you know, the Phillies are on fire. Trey Turner's on fire. And now the Phillies are poised to make another deep playoff run. My message to you all would be, as fans, whatever team that may be, stay loyal, stay dedicated, stay committed, stay true to yourself. Don't jump into conclusions too quickly, but hold these guys accountable. Call into your radio stations, get on Twitter, get involved, get acclimated with the community of fans on social media. Do what the White Sox guy did. Call into the local radio station and come with a vengeance. Come prepared, ready to go. Air these guys out. Call them out where they need to be called out. Be the John Boy Media guys. Get access to the organization. Make an impact on the fan base and on your community. Call out where they need to be called out. And you have an opportunity to make a serious change. The White Sox fired their front office as a whole. The Yankees call up a bunch of young prospects. The Mets end up trading away the 2 guys that Mets fans did not like signing. You have an impact as a fan. Use it. Use your voice, or at least support those who do use their voice properly. amplify the voices that you feel are doing it the right way. You don't have to be the guy if you don't want to, but make sure you're paying attention and make sure you amplify those who are, because it can lead to long-term organizational changes in approach. And it can be people in a group like the John Boy Media team who hold the Yankees accountable more than anybody, publicly, privately, use their platforms in the right way. They don't go out and go, Giancarlo Stanton's a worthless bag of garbage. No, that's not the right way to do it. They go, well, clearly, Giancarlo Stanton is having a hard time running. His contributions to the team, typically as an expectation, are to be a power hitter, and he hasn't done that very well recently. Not a piece of opinion, just straight facts. This team needs to be more youth oriented. This team needs to develop homegrown talent a little bit better, needs more energy, needs more enthusiasm. Asking those questions directly to the manager, and wouldn't you know it, the team calls up 2 young guys right away. And moving forward, the organization will probably have a different approach when it comes to roster construction. Just a fact. So use your voice, use your platforms, go for it, guys. Hold these guys accountable, because they need to be held accountable. Otherwise, you find yourself in a situation like the Padres, where they spent a lot of money. The fan base as a whole was sort of maybe unprepared, or just like caught up in the glitz and glamour of all the things that they were promised with this super uber talented roster, but they lacked the depth, they lacked the analytical preparation that was necessary, and they lacked the leadership. And then as things start to spiral, they lacked any accountability until this point in the year, where it's just too late. The Padres are done because they weren't held accountable for such a long time. Oh, they're bounced back. Oh, they'll come out of this. All the media world is like, they're just too talented to be this bad. Well, when you're not held accountable and you go through the motions for 4 months, you don't have the analytics or the depth to pull you out of these ruts. This is where you find yourself. The Padres, who are going to miss the playoffs with the 3rd highest payroll in baseball, or the Yankees, 2nd highest payroll, gonna miss the playoffs, or the Mets, highest payroll, out of the playoffs. The game of baseball is changing, and these organizations that used to go about it in the way of buying wins and buying players have started to recognize that that's not the way to long-term sustain success anymore. It's not the way this year, and it will not be the way moving forward. With a faster pace of play, better athletes on the field, higher velocity coming out of the pitcher's hand, and all the other metrics necessary, roster construction as a whole in baseball needs to change. And buying wins, spending the most money is not the key and main indicator for a team's success. Clearly. So if you're a fan of one of those teams that spent a lot, didn't end up winning a lot of games, or you're a fan of a team that's been bad for a long time, or doesn't seem to have a roadmap to at least plan for success sometime in the next 3, 4, 5, 7, even 10 years. If there doesn't seem to be a path, call out the organization. Use your voice, use your platform, and demand change. And you may get it. Like Berto in Chicago calling out the White Sox, who then ultimately fired their front office guys. So